This video is on comma rules. The first comma rule is items in a series. We use commas to separate words or phrases that are presented in a list form. And the important element here is that it must be 3 or more items in a series. Read the example sentence. The student talked to his instructor about attending class, making up assignments, and getting a tutor. Notice the list of 3 items the student discusses. The items in the sample sentence are attending class, making up assignments, and getting a tutor. The word "and" connects the second and third items in the list. The word "or" can also be used to connect items. Items in a series are often presented in parallel form. In this example, the parallel structure is created by using the ing ending, so attending, making, and getting. The graphic at the bottom of the screen provides a nice memory trick for this rule. This comma, that comma, and the other. So when we use items in a series, we have to put a comma between each item. Rule 2 is using commas in dates. When you have dates, make sure there are commas after the days of the week, dates, and after the year if the sentence continues. The students decided to meet on Wednesday, August 13th, 2019 to plan their class reunion. Notice the comma after the day of the week and after the date, 13. There's also a comma after the year because the sentence continues and the date should be offset. Note, if you are only stating the month and year, like August 2019, or the month and day, like August 13, no commas are needed. Commas are only used with full date and year. The next rule is using commas in addresses. Many people are familiar with this rule, but to review, we use commas after the name of the street, city, and zip code. Some addresses may have an apartment or suite number, and you would also use commas after those elements. Look at Delaware Tech's address as an example of how to use this rule. Delaware Tech's address is 21179 College Drive, Georgetown, Delaware 19947. Next, the school's address is 21179 College Drive, Georgetown, Delaware 19947, in Sussex County. The comma is after the zip code as the sentence continues. Finally, the school's address is 21179 College Drive, Georgetown, Delaware, in Sussex County. In this example, the comma is placed after Delaware because there is no zip code. The next rule is using commas in numbers. Commas are used in a number after a group of 3. Commas are optional in 4-digit numbers, but are mandatory with 5 digits or more. Let's look at the examples. May is dieting, so she only consumes 1,500 calories a day. This equals 10,500 calories a week. The writer chose not to use a comma in 1,500, but she did use it for 10,500 since it is a 5-digit number. Rule 5 is using commas with direct quotations. We use commas with signal phrases for direct quotations. Let's discuss the examples. Mary said to her mother, quote, "I have lots of homework to complete before class, so I'm going to the library." If the signal phrase begins the sentence, the comma is used before the direct quote, outside of the quotation marks. "That's fine," Mary's mother said, "so I'll see you later." If the signal phrase is in the middle of a direct quote, look how the comma placement changes, either inside or outside the quotation mark. Finally, "See you later," Mary replied. If the signal phrase is at the end of the direct quote, the comma goes inside of the quotation marks. Note the placement of the commas and periods. Remember, this rule is only for direct quotes when the speaker is being directly acknowledged. We do not use commas when quoting a single word from the text. The next rule is coordinate adjectives. The word coordinate means to, and adjectives are words that describe nouns. So adjectives describe people, places, things, or ideas. Let's discuss the examples. The difficult, stubborn child spends most of her time in timeout. The comma is replacing the word and between difficult and stubborn. I can use this comma because both adjectives, stubborn and difficult, are describing the same noun, the child. Next, she often wore a gray wool sweater. In this example, I do not need a comma between gray and wool because I cannot place the word and between the two words. The word gray describes the color of the wool, and the word wool describes the material the sweater is made out of. Next, always use commas around interrupters. Interrupters are phrases and sentences that must be set off, and interrupters will always use two commas. There are two types of interrupters, non-essential elements and appositives. Neither type of interrupter is essential for understanding the main sentence, and they interrupt the sentence structure. Let's look at two examples. Transitions embedded within a sentence are non-essential elements in sentences. The man prepared for his presentation. He didn't realize, however, that he was expected to speak for 1 hour. The transition word however is interrupting the complete sentence, not joining two sentences. So, however needs commas around it. Another way to know you are dealing with an interrupter is to cross out the word. When I remove the word however from the sentence and read it, he didn't realize that he was expected to speak for 1 hour. The meaning of the sentence is still clear. An appositive is another type of interrupter that needs to be set off with commas. This type of phrase usually describes or renames the word in front of it. Dr. Martin, a professor at the university, offers a world history class that is supposed to be really fun. The appositive phrase, a professor at the university, is set off by commas because it describes who Dr. Martin is. Hence, it is an appositive. A direct address means the writer is speaking directly to a person. You must use a comma to separate the name of the person to whom you are speaking from the rest of the sentence. Let's review some examples. Mike, please come to my house for dinner tonight. In the first sentence, the writer is speaking directly to Mike. The first sentence is really saying, Mike, can you please come to my house for dinner tonight? But we drop the you because it's awkward. Next, if you want, Mike, I'll order pizza and fries. Since the name is in the middle of the sentence, it is now like an interrupter and needs a comma before and after the name. Finally, let me know what you would like to eat, Mike. When the name's at the end, a comma goes before it. Direct addresses can be at the beginning, middle, or end of a sentence. Also, direct addresses do not have to be a name. They could be a role or a job, like the example sentence, Doctor, help me. In this sentence, someone is speaking directly to the doctor, so a comma is needed after the direct address. This graphic can help you remember the rule. In the first sentence, we're eating Grandpa for dinner. In the second sentence, we're calling Grandpa to come eat dinner. That's a big difference. Rule 9 is using commas to separate material at the end of a sentence. Negative expressions can be used at the end of a sentence to emphasize a contrast, and it must be offset from the rest of the sentence with a comma. The woman had a lot of energy, didn't she? Didn't she is an example of a negative expression because didn't is a contraction for did not. Also, the phrase is not needed to understand the independent clause that comes before it. So as comma is used between the independent clause and the negative expression at the end. Extra material at the end of a sentence is often a phrase that perhaps lists an example. The woman is involved in several extracurricular activities, including volunteering at the hospital, participating in clubs, and playing softball. The phrase underlined in the sample sentence provides an example of the activities the woman does. It is a phrase because it does not have a subject and the first word of the phrase begins with an ing. Since it is extra material at the end of the sentence, it needs a comma in front of it to set it off from the complete sentence. Words like including, such as, except, and especially are clue words that you have a phrase at the end of a sentence. The last rule is using commas after an introductory phrase. There is a variety of types of phrases that can introduce a sentence, so it is helpful to be able to recognize different types of phrases. Make sure you know what is the introductory phrase and what is the complete sentence so that you can put the comma in the correct place. One-word expressions can introduce a sentence. Yes, you are doing well in this class. The subject of the sentence is you. The verb are doing. Thus, yes introduces the complete sentence and it needs a comma after it. Transitions can also be used at the beginning of the sentence. Consequently, I jumped in my car and drove away. I is the subject, jumped is the verb. The transition consequently needs a comma after it. However, I didn't think the team would lose by so many points. The subject is I, the verb phrase is did not think. So the transition word, however, needs a comma after it since it introduces the independent clause. Adverbial phrases include words that end in ly. So in the sentence, inadvertently the girl ran into the back of the bus and damaged both vehicles. Inadvertently is the adverbial phrase. It needs a comma after it. Participial phrases that introduce a complete sentence also need commas after them. Remember, participial phrases often have the ing or ed ending. In the sentence, calling everyone in her class, Janice finally found someone who could explain the difference between adjectives and adverbs. The subject is Janice, the verb is found. Notice the first word of the participial phrase ends with ing, so it is an introducer and it needs a comma after it. Lastly, an infinitive phrase is the word to plus a verb. When an infinitive phrase starts a sentence, it must have a comma at the end of it. To get the best deals, you should shop after winter holiday. Notice the infinitive, to get. The comma goes after deals because that is where the introductory phrase ends and the independent clause begins. The actual complete sentence is, you should shop after the winter holiday. The subject is you. The verb phrase is should shop. So that is the independent clause that gets offset from the introductory phrase using a comma. This has been a review of comma rules. Please see your instructor with any questions.